Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Introduce Yourself. My name is Ryan Reed. I'll be your host and master of crate digging. The idea for this show has been brewing since early 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. My wife and I decided to finally go through our record collection, which is fairly large, several thousand records, and properly organize this thing, put it on Discogs, get everything labeled, get all the conditions marked. And that's really the thing that sparked the idea for this show. And I'm so happy that I'm finally getting this off the ground. So thanks for being with me. But in a way, as a music journalist, as a musician, and as a collector of physical media dating back to my early childhood, I think all roads have been pointing toward this show for quite some time. I really started collecting in the CD era. Technically, I was born around the late cassette era, and I do remember my parents having a lot of cassettes growing up. There were plenty of them floating around in the family minivan, but CDs were my real first love, and I can remember some of my fondest memories growing up, traveling 20 minutes from Williamsburg, Kentucky, up to Corbin, Kentucky, going to the Sam Goody, later FYE, and buying whatever new release was coming out that Tuesday. Before that, I was ordering CDs, often at random based on the cover from the BMG catalog. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about there. Maybe a bit of a dated reference. And then later years, graduating up to Best Buy, which was about an hour drive from my small town. And eventually getting into record stores when I moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I currently live. And that really sparked this whole other layer of discovery for me, and it deepened this passion that continues up through today. I continue to collect, I continue to pile it on, but why? Well, I have some ideas, but I'm hoping some other really smart, interesting people can help answer that question with me. I'm going to talk to some musicians, talk to some other notable people from other fields, and even some friends. It's amazing that we have basically instant access to any song, any album ever recorded, but really nothing beats the emotional investment that comes from buying a physical copy of an album and living with it over time. Today's guest is Anthony Davis, aka Ant, the producer and one half of the Minneapolis hip-hop duo Atmosphere, co-founder of the Rhymesayers Entertainment label, and a collaborator with a number of other artists. His debut solo album, Collection of Sounds Volume 1, is out now. During our conversation, among many other subjects, we talk about his massive vinyl collection, some of his weirdest and most interesting digs, how his dad got him interested in collecting, and why he continues to seek out that next amazing find. So without further ado, allow him to introduce his shelf. And I guess the first thing I was going to ask you to do, looks like you've got a pretty sweet backdrop of records there. Can you just sort of give me a general overview of your collection, how you have it organized, and what kind of stuff you have?
Well, well, technically, it might not be fair compared to some people, maybe, because I have like 30,000 records, maybe.
Oh, Cal.
Yeah. So, like, technically, I know you weren't necessarily at. So if I turn like this, you see like, and then if you,
Oh my God.
yeah. So it's kind of like, it's not really, it's not normal. You know what I mean?
No,
Uh, I,
that's
I do.
aspirational for me.
Yeah, I know a few people with problems like mine, but I have like, beside it being my problem, it is part of my career
I
path.
think
And
I
yeah,
think
I
you
don't
get
know.
a pass. I
I
think it's
give
like
myself, yeah, I give myself a little excuses here and there, but yeah, yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
no, that's like I'm drooling over there because I think my collection's probably up to maybe 5,000. So I've got a long way
Yeah.
to go before I get
With
to ant status.
yeah, that I think that's a good manageable one. That was my dad was about that. He had like, and I was like, oh my God, I always wanted that too, So
Yeah.
as I got older, I was constantly stealing from him, you know what I mean? And then I finally got his entire collection. And speaking of which, I might going off the rails here a little bit, but
Oh, go for it.
I still have most of his records, obviously, and they're in this pristine they were in pristine condition this whole time, and I have them just in the crates as they were. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
have them, I still have his stuff. They're not in some weird order with my stuff for the most
Yeah.
part. You
So
know,
they're separated like in their own entire.
yeah, with yeah, the way he had them, kind of.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
yeah, so and they're and they're yeah, and he had pretty good taste. You know, what I mean,
Yeah.
he was a young dad, so yeah.
Well, that was actually going to be my first, I guess, real question. Was I knew about your dad being a collector, and I
Hmm.
guess you kind of answered that already. But is that sounds like that's what got you interested? Were you just how old were you when you started, like rifling through the records and going like, oh my God, what is
Well,
this?
well, when I was real young, let's say, they were because they were just always around, obviously, and so like, so I'm like 6, 7, 8, all that stuff. I would just look at
Yeah.
the covers. So let's say there was the Mandrill cover. I don't know, that funk
Oh
band.
God. Yeah.
So I would look at there was one or two of those covers. I'd just look at them and go, "Whoa, what are those guys doing?" Right?
Yeah.
And then I would be like, um, looking through the covers and all the like the headhunters or something like that,
Yeah.
or pretty ladies on covers, and I'd just be really intrigued with all this stuff. So
Yeah.
it started there. And then my dad playing music, so always hearing music and being influenced by that. Later in life, I realized, oh, I would use music as an acceptance, whether it's to speak to my dad in general, because it'd be like the only way to talk to him, especially later in life.
Yeah.
It was through music. I couldn't talk to him about anything else really. Um, so we could that was and I would use that also as a adolescence came into play. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think I used music as a functioning tool to get through life and society or
Yeah.
whatever and social situations. Yeah.
Let's talk about when you really start collecting. I'm glad you mentioned that Mandrill album, or Mandrill in general. I was just at the record store like a week ago and was looking through the Mandrill and found one that I didn't have. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed. So that was just on my brain.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's
yeah, I
funny
think,
because I had never used that reference necessarily, but I did think about that as a kid. I remember being like
yeah,
intrigued. There was the monkey on the one, and yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's
You're like,
crazy.
what could this possibly be? I mean, I remember thinking that's one of the
Yeah,
joys I think about collecting. That's how I collect. I don't know. I think a lot of us are that way, but
yeah,
once you kind of get your catalog built up to a certain level and you're like, first you go in, I think, and you're like, I want this. I want to collect this funk album, this prog album, whatever. And then you kind of get your stuff. And then from there, it's like the second layer of like, what's the things I don't know what they are? And so you go based on the cover. You maybe flip it over, you look at the liner notes, you look at the credits, like, oh, there's a 12 string and like a
yeah,
whatever, like a flute, like there's a monkey on the cover. What is this thing?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, then you start, you're intrigued growing up, looking through your dad's collection. Then you start actually listening to some of this stuff. So what would
Yeah.
be like what's your like earliest memory if you can think back that far of just actually putting one of these things on and going like, oh, this like in a kind of light bulb moment for you and
Mhm.
can you
Uh,
think back to that?
well, one of the big ones, one of the big moments were there were songs like after like let's say Planet Rock by African Bambaataa, a
Yeah.
very big song when I was a kid, and I was 81, 82, something like that. There was also a a song by Johnson Crew called Pac Jam,
Mm.
and it was part of the big, there was the big Pac-Man
Yeah.
thing going on at the time. It was a phenomena, so there was, of course, there was a song, but it was a very great song, and it's still one of my favorites to this day.
Yeah.
And there's a story to that, and I've told it before, but fuck it, I'll tell it again. Uh,
Go for it.
I recently found out, somewhat recent, that there was when it was an independent record, it was called Pac-Man, like,
Yeah.
but when they got signed to Tommy Boy, it became Pac Jam. They even changed the spelling and changed a little bit of it. So it's like, oh wow, that's crazy. So the single, the very first one is just as dope. It's just as great. It's just came out, and I finally got it, but it took a while and took some time. But
Yeah.
anyway, when I was a kid, I was so intrigued with that song. Just the way it sound, all this, you know, science fiction was a big deal, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
and all that stuff. So it just intrigued me. And so being that, it was naturally intriguing. And then at the kids at school, so I was probably like 12 years old, just that prime age for getting
Oh yeah,
into music heavy. And
totally.
then I'm realizing, oh, most kids don't have access to music like I do.
Yeah,
The average dad doesn't have 1,000 records. My dad ended up having about 5,000 maybe or
yeah,
something like that. But it maybe not even that much. But anyway, point being that he had tons and I had access to tons of stuff. Most of my friends, their mom and dad might have had 10 records to their name.
yeah.
Maybe they had a very limited, even they might have had just the biggest records ever, like the Thriller album or something. You know what I mean? Or
Sure.
some
Yeah,
Beatles shit or something like that. They just had
totally.
the biggest stuff. So I had all this, man, I had rap stuff when my dad didn't even know what rap was. He was just like, oh, it's the new disco.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's just the new funk music. It's not really, he's not calling it rap or hip hop. He's not gauging it like that.
yeah.
It's just it's just funk. You know what I mean? So using my knowledge of music through him to gain, let's say, not necessarily popularity, but I'm getting to know the cool kids because I know all this stuff.
Totally.
And so I'm hip to things fast, you know. So when breakdancing comes out, I get into that obviously because it's like 83,
Yeah,
82, 83, 84, something like that. So it's all colliding at the same time for me. So all that stuff is a new phenomenon. Plus I'm at that brand new age. And so,
totally.
and then my dad was also an aspiring DJ, but he was aspiring DJ in the traditional sense, you know, like playing at a party.
Yeah,
He, but he had two turntables. Who at that time has two turntables?
yeah. That's
Nobody has that. So I'm touching that stuff, obviously, when he's not around.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. Boom. So
Right.
it's all that kind of you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah,
a progression, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dominoes tumbling. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, 40 some odd years later, I'm still, well,
yeah, it's a
I'm almost 54 now, but I'm just saying, like, I would say
lifelong thing, man.
yeah, I've been doing it since 12, you know?
It's incredible.
Hmm.
Seems like a natural point to segue into your album, Collection of Sounds, Volume One.
Hmm.
I've been checking it out the last couple days, especially, and I mean, one, it's a great piece of work. It's fantastic, and people who love your production and love your stuff will love it. But another thing that's really interesting and ties so well into this conversation is, to me anyway, it plays almost like a love letter to vinyl and to collecting. There's all these samples of snippets of people talking about collecting that are really interesting, and
Yeah,
obviously some great kind of just these kind of classic dusty soul grooves. I particularly love Sun Decides. It's a favorite track of mine. But
right
yeah,
on.
I wanted to ask specifically about there's this track on here called "I Was Always a Collector." Can you talk about that and where the audio is coming from on that sample?
Um, I can't remember off the top, but it's you know, that was from a movie. Um,
Okay.
there's a movie in there just like uh I just the theme of, and it's just like the Harvey Picar, yeah, guy. I think that's his
Yeah.
name. But he was like he liked collecting, and he had our issue. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean? He has our our issue,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I always knew that I wanted to use that for something, but I just was, you know, I was just like, ah, I never thought of how it was gonna come out. You know what I mean? How I was gonna do something, and getting to this point where I'm like gonna do this stuff. I was like, oh, that might be something I could tie it together, you know,
Yeah.
because because I I do have the audacity to I'm releasing four of these basically,
Yeah.
and they're all coming out pretty fast, and it's just like they're all tied in together in that way, and you're right, it is like a love letter to collecting. I wouldn't have put this music together like this without some kind of anchor, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and because the music is also like throughout periods of my So I've been making music since the 80s,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not putting out anything from way back then, but there are things from the late 90s. There's a couple little
Yeah.
things I had on four track. I just, take a little 1 minute piece of it and
Yeah.
try to clean it up a little bit with modern technology, but try to make it a cohesive piece. So something I made yesterday could be just as interesting as something I made 25 years ago.
I
And
love
so,
that.
so that's what I kind of did here. That was the idea. And so each
Yeah.
one, each piece of the series would be just a little different in one way, being like this first one is more about like just an overall thing that I vibes that I'm into. The
Hmm.
second one is more funk style ish,
Yeah.
not 100%, but more like if people are familiar with what I do, I've done these felt records, and they're
Yeah.
more, has a more of an LA feel or something, 80s LA. Then the third one has a little more dub to it, like a dub style, and then the fourth one's a little darker.
Yeah.
So at least that's how my brain had to work to even do this. You know what I mean? So I was
I
like,
love it.
oh, so no matter who likes it or not, it means something to me. So I could present it this way. So it doesn't necessarily matter. You know what I mean?
Sort of just feels like, at least listening to this first collection, like you're kind of rifling through your record collection. That's just what it goes through my head. Like
Dope.
you're
Yeah.
getting all these different flavors of, yeah, like, oh, that's, it's almost like a sampler platter of the things that you're able to do so well. So it's such a cool idea. And again, those samples kind of give it that anchor. So
Yeah, I appreciate
well,
it. And that's
yeah.
the thing too. I was hoping to be like if somebody only heard one of these things, that maybe that would be uh it would translate into something like that. That is not what necessarily what I was thinking, but I
Yeah,
like that a lot. So
totally.
and that makes me happy.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Sorry to interrupt the interview like this, but I wanted to do a few things. First off, introduce you to my kitty. This is Tony. Say hi, buddy. He's sort of the unofficial mascot of the show. Hopefully, he'll be making some more appearances later on. First off, this is a brand new channel, as you've probably figured out, and I need all the support that I can get. So please do all the typical things that YouTubers tell you to do in this situation: like, subscribe, comment, share on social media. Anything that you can do to help spread the word would be great. And one way you can really help me out is by subscribing on the newly launched Patreon account. There are different levels, different tiers that offer different rewards, exclusive interview clips, short segments where I will do different cool things with you, talk about collecting, show records that I've bought over the years that are either my favorites or interesting things that I've found just hunting at various stores. And you can check out all the details at patreon.com/introduceyourshelf. So just the title of the show. Also, while we're here, I'm going to play a little game that I play later in this episode with Ann, and I plan to do in most of the episodes going forward, time permitted. And that is basically to pick a record at random. This also can apply to CDs or tapes or whatever. But pick an album off the shelf at random and talk about it. So let's see what happens. I try to do this blind. All right. Okay. This is a lucky pick for me because I absolutely love this album. This is Carmen, Dancing on a Cold Wind. Carmen played a style typically labeled flamenco prog, which is not your run-of-the-mill progressive rock. Really interesting stuff, obviously combining flamenco elements, some heavier moments, and kind of symphonic prog that a lot of us proggy people know and love. It's really hard to compare it to anything. They're really, again, a one-of-one kind of band. Absolutely fascinating. So I'm not the kind of person who typically buys things over the internet and has them shipped. One reason is because I get scared of records being damaged, and that's happened to me a couple times. But in this case, I had to make an exception. I bought the band's first album, Fandangos in Space, which I actually wrote about for Rolling Stone in a list of best progressive rock albums that we did, which is a cool list. You should check that out. I actually helped put that together. It was awesome. But I bought that album, that Fandangos in Space album, just found it again out in the wild. I was at a record show here in Knoxville, found it and thought, what is this? I have to have it. I don't even think I Googled it at the time. I think I just bought it. I think it was $8 or $10. Got it home and went, oh my God, what is this? Fell in love with it. And I was looking for this album for the longest time. Here's the inner sleeve. Was looking for years, hoping I would just stumble upon it and get lucky like I did with the other album. Never did, of course. This one's a little bit harder to find from what I can tell. I think I just decided I can't wait any longer. I'm going to try to find this thing on Discogs. So I found it for a pretty reasonable price. I think it was $20, $30 on Discogs from a seller that I'd bought from before. And it's a great condition. And absolutely fantastic stuff. Yeah, they have 3 albums, 73, 74, 75. So short-lived band. All 3 of them are fantastic. One of the interesting connections with this band is that, well, there are a couple things really. Their first album was produced by Tony Visconti, most famously who worked with David Bowie. Another interesting connection is that the bass player is a guy named John Glasscock, incredible bass player. Really melodic lines. They're just beautiful and can be very heavy, but really just give this music so much forward motion. Of course, John Glasscock ended up being recruited by Jethro Tull and joined that band. Unfortunately, he died very young, kind of a tragic thing. But John Glasscock, incredible bass player, and again, this album really does him justice. All 3 of the Carmen albums are fantastic, so please check them out. Do you recall the first record that you purchased? It could be any medium, I suppose, but the first record that you purchased yourself with your own money, or you got as a present, or whatever it might be, but the first one that was yours, and you're like, this is actually mine, and you took a sort of sense of pride in having it.
Yes. I remember, and there's like, I get confused sometimes which were there was 2 moments, and each moment I bought 2 records or 3 maybe.
Okay.
So, but I'm gonna tell them all just because that's
Please.
I like talking about this shit. So whatever, you know what I mean?
That's what we're here for, man.
Yeah. So the first time I was at this that I think might have been the very first time, there was a Crash Crew record, and I only bought it because it looked like rap, and there wasn't much rap, you know what I mean? And there was no, I think I heard the name Crash Crew. Oh, and it was on a Sugar Hill label, so that was enough for me. That's all. Yeah, that's the only information I really had. But and I wasn't living with my dad at the time, so I didn't have my paws in his collection, but I had some knowledge. And then I saw the Kraftwerk Numbers album, which my dad already had, so I knew what that was. I knew what it was, but I had my own copy. So I got that the same day. And that was a big deal. But when I got the Numbers record home, I truly only liked one song at that first day.
Yeah.
I adore the whole album now, and I soon after did. But at that very moment, it was just the main song, you know. And so that was I think that was my first one. If it wasn't that, it was a week later. Mm-hmm. I went to I just so happened, and it's funny too, because I didn't grow up in Minneapolis, but I was here in 1983 when I bought these records, which is
okay.
Yeah, I was just passing through because my grandparents lived here.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where my parents are from, but I didn't live here. So I stopped and I went to this one record store that's right next door to it used to be next door to First Avenue, and went down there, and I bought 3 singles, It was the Egyptian lovers, Egypt, that old jam,
Yeah.
and that was the hot jam at the moment. And then the other record I bought was Knights of the Turntable, and the only reason I bought it is because there's a little sticker on there with some guys on some turntables.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh, that has to be something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, end up, so then that just kind of turned me out. That, just listening that over and over and over. So
That's
that was the jump off right there.
yeah.
That was probably 83, 84 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That kind of brought me to one of the points I was going to make at some point, which is you mentioned, that Kraftwerk album, liking the one song, and then of course now you love the whole thing. That's one of the things I love about physical media, and I think this especially applied to like years ago, but I still kind of have this in my brain. But when I actually spend some money on a record, a CD, whatever it is, I will live with that thing for a while. I won't just,
It
listen to it casually in the background. You work to like it. Like you put
yeah.
in the equity to get like there's
You'll give it a real shot. Yeah.
exactly. There's
Yeah, yeah.
the example that I always think of is for me, there's the Captain Beefheart album,
Hmm.
Trout Mask Replica, and like such an out there avant-garde weird album. And I'd read about it. I knew it was supposed to be really great. I'd seen it on all these best albums lists and all this stuff. And I remember going to a Best Buy, and I don't remember what year this was, but buying the like CD reissue of this thing and getting it home. And I was with a friend, and I listened to probably 5 songs. And I was like, this is the absolute worst thing I've ever heard in my life. It is pure
Yeah, yeah.
noise. It's unlistenable. I think I even threw the CD. I was like, I spent like $19 on this thing, wasted my time. And then it was like but I wanted to like it because I bought it. So like every time I would hear and be like, like that track 10 isn't bad. That one's actually kind of cool. And like, oh, I think I kind of like track 8 as well. And then all of a sudden it starts to click. And then now it's like one of my favorite albums of all time. But if
It's
I just heard it on Spotify, I would never have listened to it a second time.
You would have thrown it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You would have disregarded it. Yep, yep,
Next,
yep.
that's one of the things I love so much about this crazy affliction is just it. Well, you
Yeah,
also lead to situations where, like I do, you kind of overbuy and then it takes you forever to listen to stuff. But when you do finally
yeah,
listen to something, you listen, I think, a little more closely than you would if it's just kind of streaming somewhere. Obviously,
yeah,
streaming has its benefits, but I
yeah.
think that's the
There's
trade.
some, yeah, there's definitely some stuff I like about that a lot too, So
Totally.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
benefits to whatever. Yeah.
The accessibility of streaming is just, you
Yeah.
can't beat that. But
Hmm.
but yeah, there's plus minus to everything for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
no doubt. Yeah.
I wanted to see if maybe we can go to your actual collection now. And I don't know,
Yeah.
given the size of your collection, you might not be able to find this. I would assume you probably can't. Like, what is the weirdest album you own?
The weirdest, oh, that's it's almost impossible to say, but I do have some like, I think I have like a weird satanic record. I have like a somewhere, I don't know where that's at.
Okay.
I have like one, you got to remember just because of what I do, I have some things that I normally wouldn't want in my
Right,
possession.
right.
But I have this one record where they're like there's two people just having sex.
Yeah,
And yes, that's a strange one, you know what I mean? I don't
right.
think I've listened to that more than 10 seconds, but I flipped around, see if I can get a sample off there or something. There's
It's not one you're going
uh,
to stick on with a
uh,
glass of wine in the evening.
yeah, yeah,
Probably. I mean, it
yeah,
depends. I
yeah,
guess
yeah. Well, I guess
no
I could have put it
judgment.
on one turntable and I could play some beats way in the background. But it's like I don't know. It's strange sounding sex. It's like
Yeah.
maybe they were acting. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
to think of it.
I have a lot of questions about this. I wanted the Discogs
Yeah,
page for this
yeah,
sex
yeah, yeah.
album. This is
So
fascinating.
I was, I have some. So I have things that are. It's not fair. It's just silly. And I don't know where those are 100%. I could probably find them, but I
Oh, don't worry about it.
but I did think, there was a question I saw in your email about there was a record. What record do I have that people would maybe be surprised that I have?
Yeah.
That's assuming people that know me are watching this, but let's
Yeah.
assume they do. They probably wouldn't know that I'm a big fan. I'm not a big fan of Barbara Streisand, but there's one record I like of hers a lot. And
Okay.
I'll break it out. I, I did a little homework and I was ready for it.
Nice.
So it's the Guilty record.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing about this record, it's not it's not necessarily all the songs. Um, it's like 4 songs, but it's produced by Barry Gibb.
Yeah.
So and he's on like 2 songs and does a lot of backgrounds, and so it's awesome. The songs he is on, whoo-wee, I love it. And
That's
it
the
was a
one album I own of Barbara Streisand. That's the
oh
only
yeah,
one.
yeah, me too. Yeah, it's like it's funny because it's like it's so good, you know what I mean? But I I normally wouldn't express that to people.
This
But
is
it's
a
like,
safe space.
yeah. There's a few songs in there. It's really great. And yeah.
That's awesome. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah.
Wow, I appreciate you having that at the ready. I was gonna just spring that on you next, but you actually
I
came
yeah,
prepared.
I could actually just grab anything I've never heard. I could just grab anything and who knows what will come out. But I figured I could have that. At least I legitimately love that, and it is
Yeah.
odd enough. And for the people out there that are just new to buying records or anything, that is a dollar record. You
Oh
should be
yeah.
able to go to any thrift store and you'll find it somewhere. Don't buy the reissue unless you
Yeah.
love it or something.
Yeah.
You it's out there. It's simple to find, and there's a few very enjoyable songs at the least,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one
Yeah.
of those records. It seems like every store you go into,
It's there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be there. You're gonna at the bottom where there's like the dollar stuff or the gently scratched. You're gonna, yeah, you might even be able to get it for a 50
Yeah.
cents. But
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not a record snob in the traditional sense. Sure, I have
yeah,
some records that are worth a lot of money, and
yeah,
that's fine, but I enjoy a good dollar bin and always have. Some of
same
my
here.
prized possessions are from dollar bins. Seriously.
That's a
Yeah.
good question, actually. Can
Mm,
you have a story of like your best find out in the wild when you're just browsing and
yeah.
you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Back in the early 90s in specific, when the world was getting rid of their vinyl collection because of the great CD revolution, which I
Yeah,
never understood or got into really.
yeah,
Sometimes I had to, obviously, as the 2000s rolled upon.
for sure.
But in the 90s, people were getting rid of their record collection left and right. Here in Minneapolis, we have a good history of music here, but it don't have a lot of stuff that I'm really into. There wasn't a lot of people with a lot of good soul music and just general funk stuff, even though there was a beautiful scene here, and nonetheless. So it's kind of hard to find some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But back then it was a little easier. So there was a record store called the Landfill here,
Hmm?
and that was a place where some of our main chain store here called Cheapo Records used to throw away their quote unquote junk
Yeah.
and sell it for $1 or 50 cent actually at the time. But you could get five records for $6 or I don't know. So I don't know. As a chain, they rose their prices to $1.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you know. And anyway, I have a crate to this day of gems from that place. Now
Nice.
I bought maybe thousands of records from them because why not, right?
Yeah.
Over the years I would go there. I went there every Tuesday for 10 years.
Yeah. It adds up.
Um, that adds up. Yeah. I spent $5 or $10 every time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have this one crate of just all kinds of crazy gems. They're like, and one of them is the SOUL record. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head for
I'm
some reason.
familiar with that.
Maybe it's self-explanatory. But this is Soul,
Okay.
SOUL. It's an amazing record, every song, and it's very hard to find. And I think on Discogs, it's you know hundreds of dollars now.
Mhm.
And at the time, there was nothing. I mean, it's scratchy and it has all the great sounds, but to me, that's charm.
Oh, totally.
It's not distorted, it's not messed up or anything. Or if I even hear a mark where it has a burn mark from somebody trying to scratch it,
Yeah.
it's charm to me too.
Oh, that's fair.
I don't look at it as a defect, what I mean? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The last thing, Ant, that I think I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm happy to do it myself as well,
Mhm.
would you just go to your shelf, whatever, and just grab a record at random and let's just see what you have. And maybe
Oh,
we can see if you have any recollection of buying it or anything about
oh,
it.
yeah, yeah, that's funny. But my section right here just so happens to be jazz. So I'll
All
be
right.
cheating. I'll be cheating in a way, and that's soundtracks over there. But I will just randomly do like this.
Yeah. Just grab one. Let's just see.
See what happens. Well, this is a Blue Note, Incredible Jimmy Smith. This is um I feel like I've maybe got this in the last 10 years, maybe. I
Okay.
don't I don't recall it being anything that special to me,
Yeah.
but I'm just most of us know him to be he's been obviously amazing. Uh but yeah, I don't remember anything specific on here, but I have an idea what it sounds like. It's Blue Note, it's him, but
Totally.
so and I don't remember when I got it, but yeah, so that's probably not too helpful. But
No, it's this is what's interesting, I think, is just a slice of life. Let's just see what happens to be on your shelf. That's what.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny because all of these Blue Note records, I do collect them. So I'm
Mhm.
just like a lot of collectors do that now. A lot of people
Yeah.
do. So, you can't really go wrong with Blue Note, really. You know what you're gonna get. So I could definitely put
Totally.
that on at a dinner party and just in the background, and it'll be just as fine as the the best of Miles Davis or whatever. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You
yeah.
could play any of that stuff and it's fine. It
It'll
has a
go over for sure.
yeah, it has a vibe. Yeah, yeah.
Set the vibe. So if you have maybe just a brief summation, if you can, and it's hard to boil it down, but why do you love physical media? We've talked a little bit about streaming and there's benefits to that for sure, but what keeps you in the game still out there hunting, still buying stuff? Why the physical media? What attracts you to it?
Well, first off, it's because of my history. I think it's part of just my collecting part of me. And
Totally.
it still is a tool how I make music. It's still what I do. Um I I don't know how I connect with people too much anymore, even though I do have collector friends, but we rarely hang out at each other's house with and talk about it. You know what I mean? So, but when
Yeah.
we go, some of my bandmates, me and Slug's a big collector actually too.
Mhm. Yeah.
He's extremely collecting records. So it's kind of like when we'll go on tour, we're like, oh, you know this, you know that, that type of
Yeah.
thing. So it's pretty cool and fun. And then we'll beat each other up or ourselves up over, oh, why are we still buying all this?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I just still love it so much. It went away once for like a couple years actually, probably in the like 2010, 11 in that time period. I didn't
Yeah.
buy for a few years, and that was great, kind of in the sense of oh wow, I'm not doing that and I'm not spending money, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Because record stores were even harder and harder to find. There was a moment where it was like, especially cool ones, and they weren't here. They were in the cool ones left here for the most part that time. And anyway, but when I got back into it, I felt like, oh, I just wasted 3 years of not buying.
Yeah. What was I doing?
Yeah. Like,
Oh yeah.
so I don't know. It's just like I just love it. You know what I mean? I love looking at it. I love going to stores, especially because of what I do and I tour all the time.
Yeah.
I I wish I'd been documenting this whole time. I just recently started taking little videos when I'm in a place, and I've
Yeah.
never done that before. And I'm like, dude, I've been doing this a long time, but man,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something about it once you start. It is like an actual addiction, I think, but as long as you're like doing it within your means and you're not like,
Yeah, yeah, like
well, it
right.
is like a healthy, it's a way that I can sort when I go in a record store, it's like, and I'm actually flipping, it's like this something in my brain, it's like this pure rush of joy. There's something about the hunt of it is satisfying. Actually looking at these beautiful objects is satisfying and finding something and discovering it and the mystery of it. I guess
Yeah,
for me, like the mystery part of it is a big thing. So
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's changed a lot though now too with Discogs and stuff like that. Because obviously I use Discogs, but I go through phases where I don't touch that at all. You know what I mean? I'd still truly love to just find things out there in the wild, but now it's just so much harder because now everybody price gouges, because and I understand that if I sold my collection, which I can't imagine doing, but if I did it, I would want the most I could get too. It's
really,
the American way.
totally.
Yeah,
And well, this has been fantastic. Thank you for your time. It was
of
awesome to get to
course.
meet
Yeah.
you and to see your stuff and get a little, yeah, slice of life of another collector. And
Yeah, man.
yeah, thank you so much. It was great having you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It means a lot. And when I'm when in your area, you gotta let me know the spot to go to.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, we'll have to do
Yeah.
some flipping together.